Okay, so welcome everyone. And as usual, very excited to be talking to you. It's been a little while since we had somebody in our space talking about, let's say, a key industry player to tell us what is happening. And what we're going to do today, it's a very exciting discussion with a remarkable leader in the renewable energy sector. So Jenna Harris. So hopefully you know her or you heard of her. If not, hey, just buckle your seatbelt because I'm sure you'll find it interesting. She's the CEO of Apollo Africa. And at the moment, we are at quite pivotal moment in South Africa energy history. And it's marked by really transformative changes that are reshaping how power is distributed across the country. And that's usually a prelude to what could happen next in the continent of Africa and also how power is consumed across this nation. So I've actually asked Jenna to come here with us, and because she's going to be sharing the light of on Apollo Africa recent achievement that includes securing an electricity trading license. And I know a lot of you are very curious to hear about that. Maybe because you're on that journey, you're on this journey already, and you like to see and you get some advice how to get through. And we're going to discuss about the implication of this development on the private power in South Africa. So I'd like you to definitely join us for the next 20, 25 minutes that we're going to have here, where we're going to look at the dynamics of a new competitive electricity market and how Apollo Africa role is driving sustainable energy solutions. So stay tuned, guys. Hello again. So, if you're joining us, so I'm very delighted to see you. My name is Tony to you. So, what we do, it's very simple. We raise awareness about renewables energy in Africa, but also across the globe. If you are a project developer, if you are an EPC company, if you are an investor or supplier, you say, hey, Africa is a market I like to tap into. That's a great news. And I like to support. I know there's most likely two key questions that you're going to be looking at. Number one, how can I reduce my business development costs? And number two, how can I, reach out to customer faster? Oh, listen, the good news is we could definitely support there. So we've designed awareness packages that help you three ways. Number one, give you the visibility that you need because they say out of sight, out of mind, right? If they don't know you, they don't follow you. As simple as that. We want to make sure that your customer audience will get to know you. And through that visibility that you're going to get to your target audience, we're going to help you to get as well the the target lead that you need. Target lead, we talked about people that buy your product and your services, and last but not the least, help you to achieve the sale. As simple as that. We want to show you what we've done with other people, so feel free to reach out to me, DM me, and I'll be excited to talk to you in detail about that. But today conversation, as I say, that's another industry leader, right? A female leader, like I say, we like to see a lot more. I like to welcome in this platform. So, Jenna. So, Jenna, are you with us? Let me just bring you on because I'm sure you're waiting.
Hi Tony, I'm here. Lovely to be on the call today.
Excellent, Jenna. So that's great. So, how is everything going at the moment? So, I guess you are you in Cape Town or in Joburg? Where are you at the moment?
We're actually based on the KZN North Coast,
Okay.
sunny KZN, but today I found myself in Cape Town, which is sunny and beautiful and just a great place to be today.
Okay, excellent. So that I'm sure you bring me a bit of sunshine, right? That I've been missing for some time now. So Jenna, just to give a little bit justice to your extraordinary career so far. So I have a lot of questions for you, and most likely as well, some people listening to us may have some. But before we dive into that, I think it would be great if you could maybe introduce yourself so that they get to know who you are.
Yeah, great. But it's quite broad. But uh, so I'm the CEO of Apollo Africa. I'm also the founder of the business, and the journey in starting Apollo really happened probably around 2020 when I saw the regulatory environment start to change. I've had a long history in the power sector in Africa and Australia. And when you understand the system quite intricately and you see these massive changes coming and the opportunities, for contributing to making a better system, it's quite exciting. So excitement has definitely carried me forward. And the road really started in 2020 in identifying that there's this new opportunity in the market for the private sector to start getting involved in the electricity sector, which obviously in South Africa has been dominated by Eskom in the past and hasn't really allowed for other participants to get involved. And I think, we were quite fortunate and unfortunate at the same time as a country in that we've had massive load shortages or supply shortages, should I say. And that really ended up forcing a relook at the environment in South Africa today and taking a look at it and going, well, do we need to start bringing in other sources of supply? And do we need to start bringing in other players to participate in the generation space in South Africa to sort of alleviate the pressure on Eskom? And I think that was a lot of foresight on behalf of the president at the time, who's still our president, Ramaphosa today, in lifting the licensing threshold on generation capacity from a private sector player. And that was really the start of, allowing third-party access into the national grid infrastructure. So, for my sins, I started out as an engineer working at Sasol, a chemical engineer actually, and so I had a lot of experience in large-scale infrastructure projects and the investment analysis around there. And over time, started my own consulting company, especially focused on the power sector. And in that, you get to learn a lot of things and create a lot of networks and start to understand the intricacies of the commercial aspects around developing these projects, the regulatory aspects, the political aspects. Because let's face it, the power sector across Africa and around the world is very political. And so all of these sort of factors weave in together to create an environment in which you operate in. So, back in 2020, I was assisting some of the blue chip customers in South Africa to procure their own utility scale supply, which would be wheeled to them over the grid. And there were substantial environmental and commercial benefits associated with procuring private supply.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's many to be listed, but, the one that we're most familiar with is that it creates price stability on how you can forecast your future prices. I think as we all quite aware in South Africa, we're exposed to whatever price NERSA regulates between Eskom applying for tariff increases and NERSA approving prices. So it's a little bit unstable in terms of what to predict in your future prices. And this private sector procurement really creates a hedge for businesses to secure their future power prices going forward. So I guess for me at the time, it was seeing that, it's not just the blue chip companies that are buying 100 meg at a time that should be able to benefit from going green and getting stable power prices that are perhaps a bit more affordable. It should also be the middle sector, all businesses that want to create a little bit of stability around their power prices. And that's sort of where the birth of the concept came forth for Apollo Business is let's see how we can secure these large-scale supplies and retail it out to customers so that they can also have access to power supply that's more affordable and in a more manageable manner to procure. So I think a lot of people don't fully appreciate how much it takes in terms of lawyers and advisors and bankers and all the rest to procure power at a utility scale. I mean, it could take a year and four big law firms to actually close a deal like that. But where we try to make it easy for customers is to have access to power where they don't typically have millions of rands to spend on these expensive advisors and we make something very business friendly for them to procure and to make it easier for them to access. So that's where the concept came about, and was something that's always inspired me is creating a better system for South Africa and potentially Africa in the future. And we're definitely sitting with a sub-optimum system at the moment. And I think any monopolistic system could be sub-optimum if it's not managed correctly. And the way that our system at the moment operates is that Eskom is free to incur the expenditure that they feel they need to incur, which is arguably not always prudent incurrence of expenditure. And then at the end of each year, going to NERSA and asking for a tariff increase to compensate for such incurrence of cost. So that's quite the opposite to a free market system where businesses need to have prudent management of expenses and try to reduce their costs as much as possible to provide a good customer experience and also to provide competitive products to the market. So for me, it's this vision of a future state which makes things better for South Africans and hopefully Africans in general, that inspires me to move forward. And as we all well know, the price of power and the power sector is so intricately involved in the way that we all live because it permeates into the cost of all goods produced and sold in South Africa, across the globe. And that permeates into the cost of living for people in this country. So, spiraling power prices, well, it doesn't just impact on your pocket when you want to buy power through your prepaid meter. It's also everything that you purchase. So having that uncontrolled escalations in prices, it really results in the people getting poorer and poorer over time as these costs escalates. So, that to me is something very personally driving to create something better for the future that's actually solving a problem for the people who live here.
Excellent. So, like I say, so I love hearing the story of another fellow engineer who was to turn out to be a brilliant entrepreneur. Because most of the time, so people will sometimes think, because I'm an engineer, so I started as a mechanical engineering before moving to other part of engineering. That as an engineer, you're only good at technical stuff, and you can't actually do proper business or talk about the language of money. But it's good to hear that. I just wanted to say because what you've said so far was so eloquently said that, like I say, I'm sure that would inspire a lot of people. Is that vision of giving South Africa a better system for power that actually drive you to want to lead Apollo Africa and also renewables energy?
Absolutely. This is not an easy sector to be in. It's there are so many challenges, and especially being a pioneer in the sector, you're sort of the front runner in dealing with all the challenges which haven't been dealt with before, and you need to have a lot of resilience. So having that strong vision for the future and how to make things better, not just for yourself but for other people, you need to have that in order to sustain you almost emotionally to get through all those challenges day by day. So I'm very blessed to have that strong drive and that very clear vision of where we need to get to as a country.
And that's what we need. And you
We
refer to
need
that. So there is huge opportunity, so in South Africa, but also in Africa as a whole. So in here, I want to refer to specifically about the Electricity Regulation Amendment Act. So, and I wanted to find out because obviously you get recently your trading license there. So, what kind of strategy are you implementing at Apollo Africa to really capitalize on those new opportunities?
So it's a very interesting question. The act is very exciting because it's creating that new electricity market that Eskom's been, or the NTCSA, the transmission company of Eskom's been working very hard at developing, and there's a plan in place for that to go live come April 2026. So we're definitely watching with a lot of interest. It will take a long time for that market to properly be formed and all the mechanics behind it to be working properly. And I think something that is a big benefit around that is the concept of liquidity. And if you're in the business of buying and selling electricity, unlike buying, for example, peanuts, where a customer walks away, you can't put your peanuts into a storeroom and store them.
Mm-hmm.
That electricity is gone, it's used. So it's quite a risky business to be in because you need to constantly have options if a customer does fall over. So like I said, our business is buying wholesale quantities of renewables under long-term agreements and then retailing it out under shorter-term agreements and smaller quantities. So we may have certain customers who, their business goes under. This is a natural, this is the normal course of business, is that you have to manage customer turnover, and whether it's through breach, default, or for whatever reason,
Mm-hmm.
customers may fall away. And so for a trading entity, you actually need to create a lot of optionality around what do you do with that power in a very quick manner to get it retraded. Now, in the South African market at the moment, there isn't a huge amount of liquidity. If you want to sell power, you need to go and find a customer and put out a power purchase agreement and then negotiate the agreement. It could be 6 months down the line until that power is sold. So there's a lot of risk associated with that, where you're sitting holding the baby for 6 months while you're trying to retrade this power. So the benefit of the Electricity Regulation Act amendment is that with the creation of this new market system, it should be creating liquidity in a day-ahead market. So that means I can immediately trade, I should be able to immediately trade power that I have on hand. Okay, there are a lot of unknowns still around it, in that we don't know what the price is going to be. We don't know what volumes are going to be traded through there. So there's no track record of history around it. We've got no certainty around what the price bottom is going to be. However, it's creating optionality for us. So we're going to watch it very closely with interest. There's nothing at this point in time that we can take to the bank and say, guys, we need to invest in this power plant to trade into the new market system, because it's not yet fully established. And like I said, there's no track record of pricing in there. But it's going to create that optionality, which is going to reduce risk in the market. So players such as Apollo will be able to trade power more quickly. It'll reduce the amount of guarantees needed across the system. And so the effective cost of power for consumers will effectively go down. I think even from a national treasury perspective, I mean, they put up something like 20 to 25-year sovereign guarantees that are all sitting on National Treasury's balance sheet, which is probably one of the biggest contingent liabilities for the South African government. Introducing a liquid market would mean that they could arguably go to the banks and say, we need to reduce these guarantees, these payment guarantees, because if we default on our payments, you're not stranded. You have this liquid market that will immediately absorb that power. So it means a lot for the balance sheet of South Africa. But it's very exciting times in creating that optionality and opportunities in the future.
I must admit, I've not seen. I didn't see that opportunity before. With the one you just mentioned, the fact that you actually can reduce actually the cost of guarantees, because obviously bank now have a lot more options that they have before, because the liquidity that obviously the no law is bringing. That's absolutely perfect. And I noticed that you mentioned in here that you usually obviously would buy in bulk for long term, but you retail on the short term. So would you say that's the only way the new legislation is changing the way Apollo is operating? Or is there any other way, and what would be the most significant impact on the energy markets?
So we already are able to trade bilaterals and multilaterals. So that's what we're doing at the moment, and the regulatory environment supports that sort of business model in buying under a bilateral and retailing under multilaterals. It's very new, so we've had to work a lot with the banks to make this model bankable. But I think that, our first big wind project will be one of the biggest retail projects in South Africa and potentially Africa to do on this level. And it's really affording customers who need 1 megawatt, 5 megawatts access to wind power, which is typically only accessible under large utility scale projects. So yeah, that regulatory environment's already in place. The new amendments mean that there's going to be that market system created for Eskom, which we should be able to trade into as a market participant, as a holder of a trading license. So it could be that, we buying under a long term and we're selling on a day ahead market if we see that the prices are good and we have tradable capacity to go into that marketplace. I mean, it's quite interesting if you look at the European market over the last few years with the war in Ukraine. We've seen runaway market prices in the power sector in Europe, which a lot of traders have made huge amounts of money off of buying long and trading short. So I think those sorts of opportunities will potentially come to a fore in the future. But I must say, Apollo's not here to trade on quick wins. We're here to create a service for customers and making things more affordable for them. So yeah, that's where our focus is.
Yeah, so I think obviously congratulations by the way on achieving the trading license. How long did it take for you to get it? Out of interest.
Um, we put the application in October 2023.
Okay.
It was quite a long process because there were a few things that needed to be ironed out between Eskom and the regulator in terms of competing requirements, which pushed us into a little bit of a regulatory infinite loop. But we managed to get through that, and the two parties came and solved it together. So yeah, my hat goes off to NERSA. It really does. They don't have an easy job, and their job is to ultimately protect the interests of the consumer in South Africa. We
Absolutely.
obviously had the objections from Eskom that came about during our public participation phase, and it's a new sector and a new competitive force in the market, which is, I think, quite intimidating for Eskom, to be honest. When you've been so used to an entrenched monopolistic way of doing things, and now the system has been upset for Eskom.
Mm.
And I think it's quite a hard pill to swallow. So there's, I think, some divergent thinking within Eskom. Part of the people within Eskom are looking to the future and looking here. We need to create the NTCSA with this new market code, and this is how we're going to be doing things in the future. And we're the grid operator, and we need to make sure that as a system operator as well, things are working well. And we need to expand on the grid. And then there's still the sort of faction within Eskom, which is a little bit more a protectionist about their turf and making sure that their revenue collection with all their customers stays intact. So I think that there's a middle ground where there's definitely a win-win solution for both parties, but it's not without its challenges. So I definitely applaud NERSA at the end of the day for awarding the licenses in the face of these challenges from Eskom, because they really went to consider what does the legislation say, and the legislation says there should be competition in the market. And the legislation says there should be third-party access to the grid. And NERSA's job is to protect customers and to protect customer choice, because that's what's in the best interest of customers at the end of the day. Because if you have a choice, then you can choose to go with more affordable power sources. and it forces everyone in the system to be prudent in their expenditures. So at the end of the day, NERSA did decide to set aside Eskom's objections, but we're very keen to collaborate with Eskom to ensure that they are sustainable in the future, because I can see that this must feel like a big threat to them
Yeah.
from a trading perspective. And we believe that Eskom needs to be sustainable, and they need to continue operating in the role that they must operate in and be sustainable.
That's absolutely understood. So thank you very much for that candid response, and also obviously caring closely for what's going to happen to Escam. I'm just going to say I've received already a couple of questions from people, and they're sending to my inbox. So I'll share that with you in a minute. So I just want to take another couple of questions, also just for me to say, is there anybody just listening? So you want to ask questions to Jenna Harris? She's a CEO of Polo Africa. So feel free to drop your questions. So we're gonna take it there. So we have probably another 20-minute maximum of conversation here. So please make sure that you send me your question right now if you have any questions for her. But for the time being, we're just gonna carry on. So I just wanted to find out, Jenna. So you must have gone through some tough challenges in here. So in the shift towards a more competitive electricity market. So, what would you say are the biggest challenges that Apollo has faced, and how did you address them? If you can say something about that.
Sure. Um, That's a very good question. I mean, we've got challenges across the board, but each challenge is an opportunity to solve the problem. I think for the most part, ESCOM related challenges, these are things that need to be solved through dialogue, and everyone having a mutual understanding of where the sore points are. And I think that goes for any partnership and relationship that you have in business. So, as a trading entity, we don't own any assets. We don't own any warehouses. We have no facilities. We buy and sell electrons. And so what we do in the marketplace is very relationship based. Okay. So in that, problems that we have are more relationship based and should be solved by face to face dialogue and having a mutual understanding about
Hmm.
where the pain points are. So, where our business is mostly focused around making deals, that's where the important part of unlocking the solutions sit. Um, I don't think that's answering your question in full, because I think the industry is facing a lot of challenges with this changing marketplace, and, figuring out what are the new rules, and are the new rules fair, and can we comment on these rules? Are these rules open for debate? How should the rules change? Who should be the adjudicator of these rules? So I guess one of the problems is that you can't have the one who's the referee also be the player in the game that you're playing. So I'll leave it at that. But I think some of the other typical challenges that the industry facing is around resource challenges, especially human resources. Finding the right people to be able to do what we all need to do. I mean, this is the fastest growing industry since probably the gold rush,
Hmm.
and it's happened so quickly that the demand on resources is massive. So it's probably a good problem to have, but yeah, it's a challenge for the renewable sector in general. We're very lucky to have great people in our team, and yeah, we have to attract good people to come and join us on our vision of what we're doing.
Excellent, and I'm sure people are listening, and don't be surprised if you get inundated by by demand. So, just showing you a couple of remarks that we had here. We have Prashna from South Africa. You may or may not know her, so just hello and thank you for joining. We very much appreciate that. If you have a question, feel free to share that. Just one question that I've received. I think I'd rather just take it right now before we run out of time. And the person was asking, so how will the new electricity trading license impact the average consumer and small businesses in South Africa? That's a very good question. If you know anything about that.
Okay, great. Yeah, so like I said, our business model is to buy wholesale under these very onerous long-term contracts with, the heavy contingent liabilities around them, and then retail out in a more flexible, shorter-term, customer-friendly type arrangement. So at this point in time, we sort of limited to supplying customers that are using more than one MVA. And that's really more as a result of administration from an Eskom perspective. So Eskom charges a wheeling admin fee for reconciliation of bills of about, I think it's about 8,000 Rand now per month. So when it comes to the smaller sort of residential customers, that sort of fee doesn't make sense when it comes to wheeling. But Eskom has been working on a virtual wheeling platform, which would enable the retail down to the very smallest of customers for whoever is on a time of use meter. So that's how it would impact on the smaller customers, and having sort of a price that is fixed in terms of controlled escalations. All our prices go up by CPI each year rather than the 30-something% increases that Eskom's currently proposing. So it does produce that price hedge for customers. And we also know with the advent of the new market system, then something very interesting is going to happen, and that the market will then be based on the market prices that are bid in a day-ahead basis. So at the moment, NERSA regulates the tariffs, and they go up every year, and NERSA decides what those new tariff increases are going to be. But in the future, we're going to be on a floating market price. So any distributor who wants to buy off the market is going to be buying off a floating market price system, but they're only allowed to increase their price once a year. So they need to go and buy a hedge so that they can offer these fixed prices to their customers every year. So when you have that hedge involved, then it's an extra price because it's like a contract for difference to create that price fix. So customers in the future need to actually buy their own private bilaterals to secure their price instead of being exposed to free market prices, because we don't know what that's going to be. And that means if there's load shortages, the price goes up. That means if we have to switch on more diesel generators, the price goes up, which is very difficult for a business to plan on. So that's one of the benefits of buying direct from a trading entity is, yeah, you're fixing your price. This is what you're going to get. And you can plan as a business for your future, for your next year, your next 5 years, your next 10 years.
Okay, that's actually very good and very insightful. And quick question. I know in when I was reading about the news of your company, so acquiring the trading license, I know you mentioned about, and also I think earlier on you mentioned about the first major wind project that you are working with. I don't know whether you can share some of the specific about this project and what it means for your customers. That would be great to know.
Yeah, so that's very exciting. And I mean, we've seen such an interesting dynamic in the past couple of years. So the beginning of last year, there was massive load shedding. And what we saw in the market were corporate customers were going to maximize the amount of solar generation they were trying to put on their property with diesel backup or battery backup. Okay, mostly diesel backup because it's obviously cheaper. So the last year has been a lot of focus on embedded, and it essentially cuts down your midday load. So a generation profile from a rooftop solar looks much like a triangle. So midday, we've got the
Yeah.
most power being generated. And now customers are going, well, what else can I do to manage my costs? Here I have all this midday supply, and typically your embedded solar is maybe going to produce 30% of your needs. But a lot of these
Mm-hmm.
factories and industries that are running 24/7, they're going, well, what else can I do for the rest of the day? And that's where we offer fantastic solutions, because wind power is something that can do that in a very cost-effective manner, because your alternative is actually generating solar and putting in huge batteries or running diesel all through the night, which is extremely expensive. So what we do is we create those customized products for customers. We go and look at what their load profile is. We look at how much generation they put on their rooftop or on their property. We look at how much they plan to put on, and we always encourage people to put on embedded generation. It does make sense to a limit. And then we go create a product which gives them that everything else. And what we see
Okay.
now with Eskom's new proposed retail plan is they're going to start decreasing daytime prices, your midday prices, because the cost of new solar generation is so low. And they're going to start increasing nighttime prices because the cost of that generation, of new generation, is much higher. So anyone who starts investing in power purchase agreements, which is providing them competitive prices for everything else, you're really going to be protecting your future. And if you imagine that we might one day follow what's happened in developed markets, where we see almost negative midday prices, you definitely want to be looking at the rest of your day, and you want to be looking at nighttime and your morning and evening peaks and seeing where you can get power supply at dependable fixed prices supplying your business. So that's where we're really playing at the moment, is giving customers that everything else to make them fully green.
I think you're making such a strong case. I'm not surprised to see a lot of questions now for you. We're just gonna have to go through them. So bear with me. I'm just gonna show that to them. I have Steve Davey here, say from Cape Town. Does Apollo offer a portfolio of products for willing customer in terms of agreement and tariff? So if you want to respond to that, to obviously what you can share, obviously, right? So
Steve, we can offer very competitive tariffs. It depends. The answer always depends. So we look at what profile you use. And that's also why I encourage customers not to install too much embedded solar. The more solar you install, the more we have to dump some of our midday energy, and then we have to charge you a little bit extra for that. So, the more we have to customize it, it affects the price. And we'll do anything from a 3-year up to a 20-year. Obviously, the 20 year is the cheapest option, and then 3-year is the more expensive option. But I think get in touch and we can give you an offer and share all our T's and C's with you. We're happy to do so.
excellent. So thank you very much, Steve, for joining. So we very much appreciate that. So Steve has another question also down the line, but let me just move to the next one in line, which I think is Prakna. It said that how do you think dialogue among industry stakeholders can influence electricity prices?
I think it's absolutely critical. It's, and this is where the partnerships and relationships among all the industry bodies are so important. I mean, you can see right now the Eskom electricity retail tariff policy is out for public comment. And I think having dialogue around that of what the implications are for customers, for the future market, it's really critical, and everyone must submit their comments and views on that. So, a lot of participants need to actually go and model this out and see what the impacts are on their businesses. Is this retail tariff preferring certain customers over other customers? Is it creating more subsidies or cross-subsidizations? Is it fair? Is it going to help the industry move forward? We all need to take a look at that and give our voice.
Excellent. That's fine. So let me just carry on. Like I said, there's a few questions I want to tackle them because I've planned a lot of questions for you, Jenna. But it turns out obviously people have more interesting questions than mine. So I'd rather just take their question. I'm sure I can always catch up with you later. So I think there's another couple of questions from Steve saying that great summary. Does Apollo offer a portfolio product or project for? I think we responded to
Yeah,
that already, right? So you kind of responded to that. Let me just move to the next one. So that he says, does Apollo have energy analysts evaluating the correct mix for each individual customers? I think you kind of also alluded to that, but
absolutely.
maybe you want
I
to
mean,
give a bit
we
more.
have customers also, I think, because we are a team of engineers, and we have customers who
Mm,
come and say, "Oh, I don't know whether to run my steam turbine generator because I'm going to be using more steam here, and this is going to be the impact, and we can advise them on that. I think because we have that energy background, and we do create more, customized solutions and can advise on the full energy mix. We're not just wheeling experts, we're energy experts. So we could advise on what's the best overall solution. And often it's very difficult to get a third party advisor to be advising on this because they don't know the wheeling market and what individual traders are offering and what impacts on the price. So it's definitely best to come chat to us, and we can talk you through a solution and create a solution that's best for you. And yes, we have very
Excellent.
smart energy analysts evaluating each and every one of our customers. So we don't take a cookie cutter approach of one size fits all. We look at each customer individually and what their needs are and what works best for them.
As it should be. So I just have a couple of questions for you, Jenna, before we can wrap this up. Another one that I received, because obviously you talked about the fantastic analysts that you have. Maybe you can say something about the strategic partnership that Apollo has, so, to support the deployment of those renewables energy across the solution across the country.
Yeah, so we're IPP agnostic in terms of
Mm.
where we get our supply from. And that's very important for us because we've probably got about 6 gigs worth of supply on offer to us at the moment.
Wow.
And we evaluate each each project on its own individual merits. So we have a very rigorous procurement process. And because we're all experts in this space, we know what to look out for and how to de-risk projects and which projects have the highest likelihood of actually reaching financial close. So I think it's quite well known that we have our first major utility project with Inatrag, who we absolutely love. They're brilliant IPPs, German head office. They know all about wind, where it's very much a more specialized sort of technology and construction and all the rest. And they've been fantastic partners to work with. But on a general sense, we remain very IPP agnostic, and we look for the best project for our customers.
Okay, I think let me just take one quick questions. Okay, so let me just say that because I know there's a lot of, I know there's few more questions that will be coming on the back of this fantastic interview. So what we're gonna do, because we're obviously broadcasting on LinkedIn, I'm sure there's gonna be many other questions. So I'm sure Jenna and the team would obviously looking at that and respond to that on an individual basis. So I can't just take all the questions that are coming to me right now. So I want to thank you for that, but I also need to respect Jenna's time who's actually here for us. But I'm just going to take this question one more and then we can wrap this up. The practitioner is saying, what strategy are you implementing to attract and retain talented individual to grow the renewable energy sector? It looks like somebody who want to work for you. So
Sure, Prakshana, you really asking the difficult questions. It's something that we ponder over day in, day out. I don't have a firm answer for you, but the one thing I do know is that people enjoy working somewhere where they feel inspired, where they feel like they're making a difference, where they feel like there's
correct.
something exciting happening every day. And there's definitely no shortage of excitement going on at Apollo. And so I think that speaks to more personal level of once but beyond getting the salary right, obviously, but speaking to a person's personal fulfillment of what they want to do with their lives, and where they feel personally inspired and challenged, and where they feel that they're growing. And what I found is that there's not a lot of people with experience in the energy trading sector in South Africa, so we have to attract people based on their charisma and their potential, and we have to train them and we have to grow them so that they can be the future of these businesses. So that's really what we try to connect with in hiring.
Yeah. Excellent. That's fine. Let me just take these questions from Steve and wrap it up with the question that I have, and we can wrap this up. The reason is this question I feel is important because I do know there's some other player out there, and you may want to respond to that. So in fact, yeah, because Steven is asking, so how do you differentiate yourself to other PPA solution providers out there? So if you can respond to that. And my last question for you was, what is the long-term plan for Apollo?
Great. Okay. I think this is a very good question. How do we differentiate? And I think every trader in the market is
That's why I wanted to
pondering
take
over this
it.
exact same question. I think for us, when we're selling an invisible product. It's not something that you
Mm,
can look at and touch like an iPhone. You pick it up and you can see this is what it looks like. Um, so so you at this point in time, everyone's trading on trust. And everyone's trying to figure out in the market because there's so much noise. There's a lot of hot air, which is confusing many customers. And so, you know, trying to create an environment where people trust you and you're honest with people about what can be achieved, what is realistic, what's bankable. I think that's a very important first step for us. Is we don't create hot air, and we don't say things that we can't do and can't follow through on. And I think that's really important in creating, and selling a trust-based product. When we're in the type of market where electrons are being traded and, here I've got a product for you to buy tomorrow, then it might be a different sort of selling environment. But we're not there today. Today, we're all selling futures. We're selling promises of what's going to come online in X number of years. Okay, so firstly, a buyer needs to trust their supplier and understand that that supplier knows what they're talking about and they're credible. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that, you know, we we really understand the market and we really understand our customers. I think coming from the engineering background, you understand capital project expenditures, you understand managing energy costs, you understand energy audits, you understand shutdown periods, you understand spurious trips, you understand strikes may happen. And these are all the factors that go into creating an agreement. Because an agreement is not just here's the price of power, here's the term. There's all of these other
mhm.
terms and conditions which you need to sit together and make sure it works for both parties. So the best thing to do is to be sitting with a partner who can actually come to an agreement, a creative solution for you that works for your business. Because if you go to someone and they say, I can give you power for 50 cents, but then they can't sit and negotiate the actual agreement with you. And number two, they can't make the agreement bankable. Well, then, what is it worth? So, so that's really where we differentiate ourselves. And I know RMB's stance in the market is that if you need long-term debt that's a vanilla debt agreement, you go to Standard Bank. They're the cheapest. They have the cheapest debt for utility scale projects that are, for example, going into the REAP. But if you need a unique deal done, especially for you, then you go to RMB. It's a bit more expensive, but we're creating something bespoke for you. And often with these supply agreements, they need to be more bespoke, and you need to deal with a partner that can actually negotiate all these nuances with you and come up with something that works for both of you and is bankable. So that's where we sort of sit. We're not going to be the cheapest, but we're going to create the solution that's best for your business, that has the least amount of risk, and we can work with you to get to that final solution that actually makes everyone happy. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, and that I believe is worth the premium.
It's worth the premium, I believe.
Excellent. So I think we've come toward the. Oh, I think you forgot to respond about what is the next step, the future. In fact, let me hold on that, because I'm gonna move to the last part that I always say to all my guests is like, we have something that is a tradition for us here when we receive guests, and I'm just gonna give you that question: what's the long term plan for you? We usually give you 1 minute to talk to whoever you want. You want to talk to either your investor or your customer. You decide who you want to talk to. All I'm just gonna do, I'm just gonna go on backstage, give you 1 minute, and you can talk to them. describe to them what is your long term and why should they work with you. So decide who do you want to work, who do you want to talk to? Do you want to address the message to the investor or to the customer? Who would you go for?
I'll speak to the most important people here, which is my team. Without
Ah,
them,
oh, actually,
without them, none of this
that
can happen. So I'm very proud to
I
work with
think
all of them. And
okay. That
every day is something new, and we all deal with challenges together. And it's not easy, for a long time. We have new things that happen and new challenges all the time. So, and I think having a team around you that supports the vision and keeps going the extra mile and comes up with innovative solutions with you, they're your gold in the company. So, yeah, it's a shout out to my wonderful team.
excellent. That was great. Excellent. Thank you very much for that. So Jenna, it was a pleasure for us to have you here to learn about the the vision that you have, the company that you've built, and also the goal that you are chasing, the solution that you've developed. I think you properly articulated why people should consider working with Apollo. And I'm sure many would have listened, the likes of Steve, Prakshna, and I'm sure other people. So thank you for taking the time for to stopping by and talking to us. And we're looking forward to support you the best we can. It was a
Thanks so
pleasure.
much, Tony. Lovely to chat.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. So, as you could see, so we've just been talking to Jenna, and actually, what a fantastic leader she is, right? So, I just want to thank her again for insightful perspective into the future of energy in South Africa and also the exciting development of Apollo Africa. So, the expertise that Jenna has sort of a display here and the vision for me is truly inspiring, especially as you know that South Africa as a country is embarking into a journey into a more competitive and sustainable energy landscape. Yeah, before we have on the Escom, now we're obviously opening up the market, and new player like Apollo can come and play the part. So to the fantastic audience, so I also want to talk to you because Jenna talked to the team. I want to talk to you, my audience, say that I hope that today's conversation has provided you yet again a deeper understanding of the significant shift in the energy sector. And I hope it has motivated you to think about the role that each of us, each of you can play in supporting and benefiting from renewable energy so innovation. Definitely keep an eye on fantastic companies like Apollo Africa. So as they continue to lead the charge in transforming South Africa energy future, Africa future. And I want to thank you for joining us, and let's continue to strive for a greener and more sustainable world. So thank you very much for that. It was a pleasure.